Hello, I'm Larry Blank, and welcome to From the Pit number 16. And I have as my guest today one of the greatest actress, dancers, singers ever. And I'm proud to say, my friend, for a very long time, Ms. Donna McKechnie. Hello, Donna.
Hello. Hello. Thank
It's
you
so
for
good.
that. You made
Oh,
my
well,
day already.
it's true. It's true. It's absolutely true. I'm just so happy to see you, and I'm so happy to talk to you, and I'm so flattered you said yes to be on this
Of
podcast about
course.
it's just so, and it's good to see you. So
Yeah,
I
same
know
here.
right now you are gainfully employed as, what is it, Madam Marable? I can never remember it,
Madam
in
Marble. Yes.
Wicked, and I'm so happy for you. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I mentioned to you earlier that I was, I've been doing concerts and I did some, of course, we did some wonderful things together and it was kind of wonderful to do, go away for a couple of days and come home and, kick back but 8 shows a week is something I haven't done on Broadway, honestly, for 30 years. And so I thought I was kind of semi-retired, but when you get, this is why I like what we do. You get pulled in again, and I love the show Wicked. I saw it earlier. I mean, 20 years ago. We just had our 21st anniversary. Anniversary. I say we because now I feel so much a part of that Wicked family. They make you feel so welcome. I got a call from my
Hmm.
agent, and he said he was kind of sounded like he was surprised. He said, "You got an offer," and I said, "Why are you yelling?" And he told me what it was, and I said, well, I think I should see it first because I don't know. I got to find out if I can do it. I have to see the show. And so I saw it, and as soon as I saw it, the role was fantastic. It weaved in and out of the whole, it brought all the elements together. This character is so complicated and wonderful. And I said, I thought I'd be so proud to be a part of this. And so I started. We have a great this great they every year they rotate principals. In other words, they keep it. People come back and see a whole new set of principals. And Brad Oscar is the wizard. Kate, Mary Kate Morrissey. Do you know her? She's phenomenal.
Hmm. Great.
Alexandra Sosha is Glinda, and Mary Kate is Elphaba. Anyway, we're a happy family, and 8 shows a week. It was daunting at first, but I must say, all of that training, all of that experience, that muscle memory does come back. And because a couple nights I went, "Oh my God, can I do this?" And then I thought, "You've been doing this for 65 years. You can do it."
Since you were
And
five
so
years old,
that's
I remember. It's great.
but I love it so much. It's a phenomenal thing. People come back time and time again. The show is the story is so potent for people, and it delivers a message right now that people really need to hear, I think, and it's a very emotional experience. And change and kids, I come out the stage door, I see little kids, I see teenagers, adults, and it's just a wonderful thing. So it's a blessing in my life. I do go
It's,
on, but it's just great. And I mentioned to you the score is fantastic. What Stephen Schwartz has done, telling this story,
and
and
Stephen Aremus and Bill
and Steve
Brown, who did the
Arenas.
arrangements.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the arrangements are phenomenal. They're so moving. I'm always discovering every night I go in, I discover something else, an element. I sat in the pit one night before I started doing the show. Uh, Dan Mitchell is the conductor, and who's brilliant. He conducts with such well. He was an actor, singer,
Hmm.
so he has all that background, but he has such energy and he reminds me of you actually, because
Oh.
you always had that edge, that energy. And if we ever lagged, you went, come on, you know, and all the rhythms in the show, all the songs, there isn't one ballad that is just a ballad that just goes, rubato, and it's all rhythmic. It all pushes forward, and it keeps everybody so tied in. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic. And please, you just mentioned Brad Oscar. Give my regards, please. And
Oh yeah.
if Dan Mishka is so much like me, tell him I said hello. And
Okay.
wish him my best.
I
But
think you would
of
love
course,
him. I
I'm
think you would love
sure
him.
if you say so, and because uh, uh, being a dancer and being who you are, you're always so musical, and you were never rhythmically wrong ever,
Can
ever.
I risk embarrassing you right now?
It's
Because
okay with me.
Don Pippin and you, were my two favorite conductors as a dancer. You, well, you know this. I think I've told you before.
Mm.
You were always there. You had it. I mean, you conducted. Dancing is a kind of different thing, and you always had it. You had it in your. I had the dance in my muscle memory, but you had it in yours, and you were the best. You kept all that excitement in the music, and it was always great.
Oh
When
well,
we went to
uh,
Japan, you just it was fantastic.
you
Even
know
though
you,
you were in
you
a vaulted room in a basement somewhere conducting, right? On another
yeah,
floor.
we were someplace else always. One of my you've told me that before, but I love hearing it again. So thank you.
Yeah.
But but one of
You're
my
the best,
favorite.
Larry. You're the
Oh,
best conductor
oh,
for in my mind.
the check is in the mail. But thank you.
Yeah.
But of course, and Don was my mentor, so that's very flattering. But one of my favorite stories. I don't know if you remember. I remember being in your dressing room in Japan. We were just having a chat before the show, and two managers came in and said, Larry-san, please, time to start the show. And I said, just a minute. And they came on each side of me and moved me to the podium while I was talking to you. They just moved me out of your dressing just so that the show would start on time. And you were like
Yeah.
sitting there going, bye-bye.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Yeah.
very
They
funny.
were very punctual.
Yes, we started on time. But it was a fabulous time, and of course, aside from the movement, even your singing and but your
Yeah,
acting
we're
was
talking
always
about a chorus line in case anybody were to get
yeah. We're wondering, but you were
what a
always in time with your pacing was always muscle memory, and one of the things I wanted to ask you because the nature of my podcast being from the pit.
Mhm.
I know you worked with a great many conductors, and of course Don, who we all knew
Oh,
and
yeah.
loved,
He's right up
and
there.
Don taught me so much about that thing. But I know you worked with Hal Hastings a lot, and Harold Wheeler,
Yes,
and
wonderful,
Milton
Hal.
Rosenstock, Elliot
Stan
Lawrence,
Lebowski.
Stan Lebowski, who always made me
Lauren
laugh.
Elliot Lawrence.
Elliot
Elliot
Lawrence.
Lawrence. Did you know
And
him?
I did know Elliot, and he was so kind to me on the Tony Awards for years when I
He
had
did
to
all of
do
those
the show.
Tony Awards, right. He
But he
he
was a
was the
great
conductor for
theater
my
conductor.
first, yeah, How to Succeed was when I
Hmm.
met him, my first job on Broadway. And yeah, I learned, coming into not having a background, not going to theater school or music school, really. I learned on the job, and
Hmm.
I learned so much music, and I was so ignorant about so much of it from the conductors I worked with and the musicians. But
Well,
mainly the conductors, because I had to, I had to be educated the correct way
hmm
for that particular show. But you learn, from, I learned on Wicked. Dan
uh-huh,
gave me insight into what I was doing and musically not to oversing. I didn't even know I was oversinging. Do you know what I mean?
sure.
And to find the right balance with the acting and I went, it's so wonderful to keep moving forward and learning things and applying it, and you never lose those important lessons.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
What was interesting, the conductors, you were so lucky to work with, you know, the really top guys like Milton and Hal and
Oh,
Elliot and
Milton.
Don. Milton had such tremendous energy, and I was lucky to know him, but I also sat behind him as an audience member many times and watched him cajole performances out of the stage. You know, he would shout things up to the stage just in fun, and the actors loved it. I remember sitting behind him when he was conducting Forum with Phil Silvers. You know, and he was shouting
That must
things
have
up
been
at Phil
fun.
Silvers. It was, and he also was the music supervisor when I conducted the cast recording of Sugar Babies.
Oh,
And I remember I was and I was on the podium and he was in the booth and he looked at me straight across the room and he went like that. And he was saying to me, "Don't give it up. Don't stop the time. Keep it going." You know, and I love that energy and seeing that. And all those
yes.
guys were like that. They knew that's what was so
Yeah.
important
Well,
in
that's the
theater.
live theater, and you're like that. You know, even with the concerts, you know, it's just very exciting. You know, another guy that I love that I worked with in State Fair, and I went to London and saw Guys and Dolls, Charlie
Mm-hmm.
Rosen. Do you know Charlie?
Oh, Charlie the
Uh,
Orchestrator. You mean?
yeah, yeah, and he did such a great job. And I went, oh my God, it's the same show, the classic Guys and Dolls, but his whole thing with writing for big bands, as you do,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, he just loves all of that, you know, that 40s, 50s, and
Yeah.
but he lifted it into a new place, all
It's
those
funny.
great older arrangements.
I told him that too. I said exactly the same thing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's so funny. Do I know Charlie? I know his mother. She's
Oh,
because they're neighbors in.
was he a singer?
No, she's a
Oh,
bassoonist.
really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
if I remember
Because
correctly.
he plays what, eight
Uh,
instruments or something? He plays woodwinds and
yeah,
he plays all
yeah,
these he's like a wunderkind.
yeah. Very talented. He was a bassist mostly, but he plays a lot of instruments. And
Okay.
uh, there was another show I wanted to ask about that we never talked about, and that was The Education of Hyman Kaplan, which I saw, and
Yeah.
uh, and you had a nice part in the show, and it was not a bad show. Sadly, conductor was Julian Stein, and Larry Wilcox
Oh,
did the
yes.
orchestrations, but
Larry
Lee.
Cox. Yeah.
Uh, 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 um, are you thinking of Larry Wilcox? Yes, and
Larry Wilcox. I'm sorry. You know,
and
you mentioned these names and it all kind of flashes back. Yeah.
right. But what's interesting, what I remember, if I remember correctly, Lee Holdridge was the dance arranger,
Yes.
and who also did, I think, Joyful Noise. And Lee, of course, turned into a great Hollywood composer. Uh,
Wow. I'm not familiar with all of his work out there,
mhm,
but
yeah. Well, of course,
it was a
when you
great,
were doing the show, he was.
yeah, he was, yes. And I'm so happy to hear that.
Mhm,
George Abbott, it was, I think, one of his last, if not last, musicals that he directed. He had to
mhm,
be in his 90s then, or late
right.
80s.
That didn't stop him.
Um, no, no, I think he worked after that too. But
Yeah.
it was a lovely show, and some of the songs were great. Tom Bosley, Barbara Minkus,
Hmm.
and yeah.
Right.
Oh, you saw
I,
that?
I saw it. I remember it, and it was unfortunate. I think it was because of the assassination of Martin Luther
Yes.
King. King hurt the show, and you know. Uh,
Yeah, well, the mayor got up in the middle of the show when he heard the news of the
mhm,
assassination, and he got up and left. And then, you know, we didn't know about it until afterward, but of
right.
course, but you know, that it was a really difficult time. But the show couldn't the show needed the right kind of publicity. I don't mean that that was publicity, but it needed it needed this, the support, and we couldn't get it. And that's fine. That's what happens, you know. But some
Yeah,
lovely,
it was a
lovely
sweet show,
songs.
and it probably would have done better had that not happened. And also, it was an intimate show, but big, a big intimate show. You
Yeah.
know, it was funny too. I also saw on the town, of course, which was really a very good production. Sad that that didn't run. You know.
That was another one that needed, you know, what do you call it? The money cushion that, now it wasn't that much money compared to what it is now. But back
Right.
then, if you didn't have the advance, or you didn't have the money for the production to get through those difficult months like January, February. I remember us all this. I don't think this has happened before or since, but I remember being in the basement of that theater, the Majestic, and all of the stage, well, some people representing the stagehands, all the musicians, the producers, the actors were there, and we had a little meeting, and the producers asked everybody if they would take a pay cut for like a couple weeks to get us through the difficult time. Have you ever heard of anything like that? And everyone, when it went against the unions or the unions agreed, everyone said, okay, we'll take a pay cut because everyone loved doing the show
Hmm.
because of that gorgeous score. And then of course it couldn't get back. But isn't that
That's
wild?
that's so great they did that because Hal Prince told the story that I think it was West Side Story. He had moved it from the Winter Garden to the Broadway, and then he had to move it to the Alvin, which is now the Neil Simon. And they had to close the show for 1 week um, because they couldn't make the change that quickly. And he went to the unions and asked if they would give up 1 week's salary so that he could run the show for 6 more months. He said, if you give us 1 week, I
Wow.
promise 6 months. And would you believe, I hate to say this, the musicians union said no, and he closed the
Oh,
show. He said it cut the run of West Side Story by 6 months
wow. Well, then
because
that points up even more how wonderful and unique that was to be in that position with all these different parts, unions or the
mm-hmm,
musicians, and everyone agreed, and we were, they did it. So but that
yeah,
never happened. That probably will never happen again. It
no,
didn't
times have
happen
changed.
before.
You know what else is
Right.
wonderful? I am so pleased. Of course, we've done so many concerts together, and I loved when we played London, and I was even playing piano for you uh, in the
Yes,
days when both of my hands worked. Uh,
they were pretty
but
good. Yeah.
I was, I could slam that left hand down. But um,
That
I,
Pizza on the
I
Park. I remember that
right,
one.
I love the fact that you're doing so much work outside of just musical theater, out of concert work. And can you
Well,
talk
most
about
of
that a little
the
bit?
last, as you know, the last, I don't know how many years I've been doing mostly when we did the Marvin Hamlish concerts with
Hmm.
John Such. That was fantastic to be able
Hmm.
to do that. It was just wonderful. And now I have a song. That's how I got Wicked. I guess if there are young musicians, actors, or dancers that pick up on this conversation, if you keep at it, I mean, um, that's the most important thing to keep doing if you're able to keep doing it what you love. Because I did my when I say little show, it was a cabaret in Palm Springs, a lovely place
Hmm.
called the Purple Room, right?
Right.
And I did a Sondheim evening that I put together in New York for 54 Below, which is the place we all go, the Broadway people and other people, wonderful singers and jazz artists, and did that there. Went out to California, in Palm Springs, and Joe Montello, the director, the original director for Wicked, has a house there, and he just happened to be in the audience. And I never met him. He was just there and left. And then months later, my name came up. He brought it up for Wicked. So that's how I got to this place where I am right now. And I couldn't be happier. So I just think it's a wonderful thing to be able to continue working, bringing theater songs mostly, because that's my
Mhm.
training, you know, and
Sure.
creating kind of a theater, because I'm not really a chanteuse, although I could take off on one perhaps, but to bring, some theater, show music and create an evening of songs. And I love the Sondheim stuff.
Of course.
I can't wait to get back to that.
You know, it's so funny. You know this, and I know this. Uh, uh, Everybody got the impression that uh, Steve Sondheim and like Elaine Stritch were these, like Elaine was a dragon lady, and Steve was this, you know, awful person because you always see him so tense. And you and I both know they were both wonderful people and easy to work with.
Oh, yeah.
Just so talented,
So,
and
so, absolutely available. Uh, and when I really, I mean, because I worked with him like four different times in different concerts, and just of course, we know that from his work, how deep feeling he is and what a genius he is. But he was very available and a sweet, funny person. He had bite. But he had just a flowing, wonderful heart and
I'm
sensitivity. And
yeah, most people
right.
didn't know that, but I have to tell you this, which I don't think I ever told you. We were doing a production of Sweeney, where I was the conductor, and the leading man was a well-known television personality um, uh, named Kelsey Grammer. And
Oh,
Kelsey uh, didn't do a lot of homework, and he's a good performer, and he had done a lot of musicals, but he was singing consistently a quarter tone flat. And Steve said to me very gently, he said, I know it's not good for the orchestration, and Jonathan would be furious, but would you please add the violins playing along with Kelsey at this point? And I turned to Steve and said, maybe they should stroll, meaning walk along with him on the stage. And Steve looked at me with daggers and said, and you think you're funny. You know, and I really said, boy, was I lucky. He could have killed me on that one. But he was very sweet.
no, he appreciated you.
I loved working with him.
He loved
Yeah,
musicians.
he
No, he
was a
loved musicians.
yeah.
No,
And I remember,
we're so lucky, right, to have been
uh,
in his
you know, and
presence and working. And I just when I did, he came to see. Well, he was there every day at rehearsal when we did Follies at the Paper Mill Playhouse. Um, and I was really anxious doing Sally, and he was there with James Goldman, who they hadn't spoken. I think it was like 20 years they had not
mhm.
been in each other's lives. It was a little something that happened, um, and it wasn't resolved for 20 years until they came back to those rehearsals, and they started working on the show again with this cast. And Dee Hoty played Phyllis. And I said, can you believe our good luck? 20 years after the show opened, they're here. The creators are here working, and they're like fixing and changing. And I said, it's fantastic. He had everybody come into a room with Jim Coleman. Do you know Jim?
Of
Was our
course,
conductor
another
at that time?
fine conductor. Yeah.
Yeah. And he we all waited in the hallway of 890 Broadway where we rehearsed with these folding chairs like at school, and the principal's office, so we each had to go in, and Steve was there to listen to our songs, and give us some pointers, and some feedback, right? And so I'm sitting there, and I'm, very nervous, but who's more nervous than I am is Ann Miller. She's sitting next to me and she's like quaking. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she goes, "I'm so nervous. I'm so afraid I'm going to forget my lyrics," because she was singing "I'm Still Here." And I said, it'll be fine. So I felt better being able to calm her down. But she went in, and you probably heard this story, right? That she sang for him and he saw her nerves. This is my imagination a little bit, but Jim Coleman, who was there, told me he he was sitting in the chair and she was facing him, and the piano was, to her right, his left, and he saw her tension, so he got up and went to the piano as if he was turning the pages or helping Jim, so he would get out of her line of vision.
Oh.
I mean, being directly that. And she sang the number, she got through it, and he came over to her and he said, this makes me emotional right now. I can't believe it. He said, "You're the reason I wrote it. Who
Wow.
you are is why you're the reason I wrote the song. You're the real thing, in other words. You're the real deal." And she, you know, from that point on, she just, every night, stopping the show. When we recorded it, this is hysterical. I remember being in the room, and Jonathan Tunick was the conductor for the record recording. And Steve is sitting in the room, and we're all kind of waiting for our turn. And she's singing "I'm Still Here," and she comes in, she goes, "Can we get the tempo a little? Can we just get a little and maybe we can get some drums at the end, a little bit." She's having so much fun, and I went, "Oh my God!" She's Sondheim's sitting there listening to this, and going along with it. He's going, "Oh, okay, I'll see. Maybe we can."
Yeah.
Hilarious.
But he just
She was
yeah,
great, but he loved her.
it's great. One time we were in Washington with Sweeney Todd at the Kennedy Center. It was Christine Baranski and Brian Stokes Mitchell, Walter Charles, and we were. It was Baranski's 50th birthday, and we were at a restaurant. And Steve walks in with Harolyn Blackwell, the soprano,
Oh,
and
yes.
he sits down, orders a bunch of wine, and gets promptly, happily pissed, as we say, and goes on telling show business stories about Bernstein, Lenny Bernstein, stuff like that.
Oh.
And just laughing, and he turned to me, said, if Company wasn't a hit, I'd still be in a piano bar accompanying Elaine Stritch on "He Was Too Good to Me."
He was too good to me. Oh my God.
It was such a warm, funny moment,
Yeah.
outside of the theater. So I
The cherished moments that you're able to be with someone like that.
and
So
he was
personal.
nothing but nice to me conducting the show, and sweet things. And the one thing was, I said to him one day, someone who I didn't particularly like, but I said, "If you see Arthur Lawrence, give him my regards." And he said, "When I'm speaking to him again, I will."
Maybe he wasn't kidding.
He wasn't
Or
kidding.
was he? No,
He
yeah.
wasn't. He wasn't. So it was
I was not a big fan either, but that's another story.
Well, and my mentor, one of my mentors, in addition to Don, was Erwin Kostel, the orchestrator on West Side Story
Oh,
and Forum.
yes.
And he would sit and talk for hours with me about days like that, and talk about Kostel and Sid Raymond and all those guys. It was just fun to talk about that. I wanted to ask you something. I have a good friend named Scott Emerson, who was one of your greatest fans, and he wanted me to ask you. He actually wrote me a note today and said, "Please, please ask Donna about the evolution of the TikTok number in Company," which we talked a little bit about before privately. Since
That was amazing that it stayed in the show and was successful as it was, because it was really the two numbers this is when we went out of town. I think we were in Boston. The two numbers that that Hal Prince eliminated was another 100 people and the TikTok dance, because the show, they were still kind of forming the whole, flow of the show. And so those two numbers came out. He was such a gentleman about it. He took each of us, Pam Myers and myself, separately into the lobby and said, we're going to, take it out. We're going to see how to fix it. And I said, will it go back in? He goes, yeah, we'll. So it was devastating. When we went, we went to work on the number again to fix it, because I heard this arrangement one time on a YouTube thing or recording. It was so bad. It was all rock and roll, just but the backbeat and just hard hitting the whole thing. And it was so on the money, and it was just awful. Okay, so this could be a long story, so I'm going to go. So we're in Boston at the Schubert Theater from 12 noon to 12 midnight, I think. David Shire had just gotten married, was on his honeymoon, and he brought his beautiful bride to the empty theater all day, and she sat. I remember her sitting there and not, having so much fun being there the whole time on her honeymoon. But there was David working with, I'm trying to think. Well, with Bobby Thomas, who was the drummer, who Michael always, and they created an arrangement that became the one, but it was very difficult getting to it. I had a confrontation. I wrote about that in my book, because it was just such a turning point in my life, where I had to fight for, and I'm head to head, eye to eye, nose to nose with Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim, and I'm begging them to fix the dance number. Don't just eliminate it. I felt I was like in a life and death thing. I was very dramatic, but I meant it. And I could have been fired by saying, Hal said, go get dressed. It's half hour. We'll talk about it. I said, no, I'm not leaving this stage until you promise me that you're going to fix it. And he said, okay, I'll fix it. Now go get dressed. And then we came in those 12 hours. David Shire then put it together, and with great, the effectiveness of having the scene before kind of start. And I mean, the dance started, and that beautiful arrangement. There must have been like 2 or 3 arrangers on that piece, right, Larry?
Yeah, well, Jonathan orchestrated, but I think I remember Wally Harper was the original dance arranger, but David
And
came in
Bill,
obviously.
Wally Harper, but there was, oh gosh, I hate this. I can't remember. Who are some of the great orchestrators of that era?
Yeah.
He was doing he was just great. Jazz, more
Billy
jazz.
Byers. Billy Byers.
Yeah. Billy Byers. Oh my God. That made a big difference. And so I came down, the dance started, and then the voices of the couples, I love you, Harry, I love you, Sarah, after the kind of silly lines that Bobby and the stewardess were saying in bed. So all the dance started through all of this dialogue, and it kind of tied it in. And then you had this really sophisticated sound that enabled the dancer, me, the actor, to touch on feelings of being the girlfriend of Bobby, of feelings of longing, of frustration, of anger. So all of these colors that connected to that the character, it would justified that moment, which is so abstract with that dance coming down. I think that's why they don't do it. We talked about this, because it was so perfect for that show at that time. And it was so sophisticated. I remember it built, and then it would go through all these phases, and Michael's choreography was so powerful in it wasn't trying to be, he wasn't overdoing it. It was just as if this woman was moving out in a very spontaneous way with all of her feelings, and the physical life manifested and it was very organic that way. I guess that's the perfect word. But it was powerful, and the build, and then the big thing at the end, and the blackout, the way they did technically ended it. But the music is always the motivation for me.
Oh,
And I think
spectacular. It was a
for
great moment.
most people, right? When you lift
But
something off the ground, as musical theater is, it's up about 2 feet. Even plays are, you know, uh, lift you up, to another place. But musicals, you have to go it's a little further, and the music takes you there.
when moments like that happen in theater, there's nothing like it. But what was I remember seeing it. I saw the very first preview in New York at the Alvin. That's when I saw
Oh,
Company, and from the very beginning of the show, when you heard that the new sounds of the guitars and the RMI electric piano with the Company number at the very beginning, it was staggering. The whole show, and
wasn't
of
it
course,
the way it
uh,
opened?
and then another
Yeah.
100 people, of course, and then your number. Uh, it was it was an amazing piece of theater. It was so funny because I didn't see the show again until they did it at the Kennedy Center, and I actually
Mm.
sat with Steve and Michael Starobin because I was there with Sweeney Todd, and Starobin was there with Sunday in the Park, and Jonathan was conducting, and that was the next time I saw the show. And it was thrilling to tell Steve that I had not seen the show since April of 1970 to that day in 2002, I think it was. And he was kind of
Wow.
impressed by that because I said, jokingly, in my normal way, I said, "Well, Steve, the book really holds up." And he didn't think I was too funny then either. But but it was true. It was an impressive piece of theater, and I
Yeah.
think the music and
That score is and I've done some wonderful shows with great scores, I think, Chorus Line being one of them. But Company is a score I can listen to. I never tire of listening to it. I hear, what I mean? I could play it,
mhm.
and I love listening to it. I never tire of it. I'm not sure why, but the songs, I don't know why. It's just, I
Well,
don't know why.
it was a
It's
real
just great.
game changer. It was a game changer.
Yeah.
And I was talking with a friend the other day about the game changers in musical theater. One of them, of course, was West Side Story because it was a massive change in quality of music and choreography.
Mm-hmm.
I also mentioned that Promises was a big game changer
Oh,
because
big.
of the way the pit was done and the miking and just the change of music using a different
That was the
type of
first time that they Phil
Phil
excuse me,
Ramone. Phil
Phil
Ramone, yeah.
Ramone,
And
back because he produced all Bacharach's music, right? And to get that recording sound in the theater, to get that
big
mix
game
feeling,
changer. And then
and it was.
Company was shortly thereafter, and of course, they used the pit vocals again as they had in
Yes.
Promises. But it was a game changer because of the score and the whole approach. Of course, Michael's choreography. He was zooming at that time,
Yeah.
and
They
and
all were
your
so
appearance
brilliant on that, putting that.
in both shows.
And
So those
Harold
were
Wheeler,
unbelievable.
excuse me,
Yeah,
I think that was his first conducting job.
it was.
He was
It was.
25 yeyears old, right?
Yes, and he was the dance arranger
And he
and
got
got
this job, and I
it's
don't.
amazing.
Do you know him? He's
Yes, sure.
Harold. Yeah, yeah, sure.
And a matter of fact, when I was first getting arranging jobs, moving from being a conductor to more of an orchestrator, Don Pippin hired me on the Miss America TV show
Oh,
to be an
yeah.
orchestrator, and Harold was one of the other orchestrators, and I was just, I wanted to do it, and I had a lot of training and instincts for it, but to listen to what he did and what I was learning to do, I really paid attention to Harold, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was such a gentleman about it and very kind.
I do
Oh
think that
yeah,
Harold,
all those guys.
I think Harold had something to do with part of that orchestration in company too.
Probably so, because he was working with
I
Michael
think
at that
there
time,
was
and
because Michael, loved him because of what he, the way he, his feel for things like that. And I think
right.
I don't know, I'm not sure about that, but I think I remember that it was
Well,
a project. That number, I mean, there were like all these different people working on it,
but didn't
as musicians and as direction. Hmm?
Harold come in on Music and the Mirror as well? Uh,
Yes, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of, Larry.
yeah, I think
I may
so
be wrong
because
about company.
yeah,
Because you can edit that or not, but
yeah,
no,
you,
it was Chorus Line. That's when Harold
yes,
came in,
yes, and Billy Byers.
and
That's what I think.
yeah, that's
It's
right.
easy to conflate the two because there
Oh
were such
God.
spectacular numbers, and to
Do you know,
see them.
I love what you're doing because one of the things that attracted me, to your podcast is that you mentioned the names that I haven't heard in a long time, and you're paying respect to them. You're keeping them alive in their work.
Mhm.
They're part of their legacy, and it was just wonderful to hear those names again because you too easily, you keep moving, and I never live in the past. I never reflect, hardly ever, which may be a fault, but I always am going the next thing. But to hear that and hear the names and have all this wonderful, you know, connection and memory is wonderful. So
Oh, thank
thanks
you.
for doing this.
I'll tell you something interesting. When I wrote my book, which was basically the pandemic happened, and I said I want to keep myself occupied. So I did two things. One was Pilates, so I wouldn't gain weight, and the other one was writing my book. So I had the time to recollect, and I have a very good
Right.
memory anyway. So I just
Yeah.
started putting things down. And the funny thing was, when I finished the book and I gave it to an editor, she said that I mentioned too many names, and I said, "They're the people who are going to read my book." And I want to mention all of their names. So thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to remember all these great arrangers like Red
And people
Gensler, who,
Google now, if they
yes,
don't know
yes.
something, they Google it. And that's really great.
We had Red Gensler, who was the orchestrator on How to
Yes.
Succeed, and Irv
Yeah.
and Sid, who did Forum, and Larry Wilcox, who actually did a great deal of Chorus Line. And then
Yes.
all the other guys that helped on Chorus Line, and all these great dance arrangers, and David Shire stepping in as a favor to
Wow. I mean,
Steve
these are musical
Sondheim.
heroes for me. They're
Amazing
just, and
people.
they're not, they're unsung. They do their work and they produce great things, but they all help each other too, which is what the
Mhm.
theater people do. And Neil Simon came to help Michael with, seeing where he could help him put a few like jokes in the show.
Right.
This is people always, have it's like the family, thing. You just go help. I think it's still the same. I'm not sure, but I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. But that's, and you do your work, and that's what's important to most of the people I know in theater because it's so hard. And then you enjoy what you're doing.
Of
So
course, of
it's not,
course.
so there's so many heroes, I guess I'm saying, that are unsung, for
Hmm.
their work.
You know what I also remember? I saw you and Pam, of course, do that Harold Arlen show in L.A.
Yeah.
Was it called Get Happy? Maybe
Oh, that one. Yes. Yeah. In
that.
a little tiny theater.
Yeah, it was the Westwood Playhouse, I think. Um,
Oh, that one, yes. We moved from a
Yeah,
little garage to
yeah.
the Westwood Playhouse.
We moved
Yeah,
through the garage to the main room. You
yes.
know, but it was interesting. I don't know if you want me to bring this up, but I saw you do Joyful Noise out at Westbury, and you were
You
so
did.
good.
Oh my
I
God. You
did.
must have been
You
a teenager.
oh we were a couple of years apart, but I I uh, I remember how good you were in it, and it was
Ah, thank you.
and
Well,
it was a nice.
some of us got eliminated when they changed producers, and that was one of the things you live through in in show business, I guess. But I remember this was Michael's first Broadway show.
Mhm.
Promises was his first big hit, I think. Yeah, but Joyful Noise, I remember we toured in Summerstock first, and I remember being, because John Raitt was, the leading man
Right.
and wonderful, and I was like playing my first, ingenue leading lady, and I would be at the top, looking down at the tent on the stage, and all the dancers would be down there with Michael, and they'd be working on this great production number. And I felt, oh my God, I wish I was there and not here.
Yeah. And that.
I mean, I had a great time doing it, but I felt I was, not in a great place with this. That was so new and to me. But thank you for that. Yeah.
Oh no, it was wonderful. Also,
It
I
was a great cast. And Tommy Tune was in the chorus.
sure
Leland
Byork
Palmer,
and yep.
Bjork.
And what I also remember, uh, the music team was Renee Wiegert and Rudy Bennett. Rudy was my conducting teacher. So
Rudy,
I
yes.
yeah, and so I spent much time with him later on in my career, and he helped me with my conducting.
Rudy is one of those people that helped to educate me, that
Mhm.
helped me out. Wasn't just dictating how to sing it, but really that maybe that's his teacher's nature, you know?
Yes, he
He
became a
really
very
wanted me to learn something.
he
Yeah.
became a terrific vocal coach as well. So, you know, these are such great memories for me, and I'm glad it wasn't a bad one for you. But that's
Oh
funny.
no,
You're
no,
yeah,
no. It was just, okay. What's next?
yeah. You told me once a story which I don't mind if you told me about Ethel Merman making faces at you on stage.
Yes. I thought she was having a stroke. I was so scared because well, the afterwards I found out, of course, it makes sense. But I was leaving, I did a tour of Call Me Madam with Ethel Merman, the John Kenley circuit. Anybody of a certain age would, the business would know. It was a wonderful, in Ohio, all these theaters. I think there were three of them. Anyway, we did a tour. Ethel Merman never toured. Mary Martin toured, but Ethel
Hmm.
didn't. And this was in 1967. And I had no idea that her daughter had died like 3 months earlier.
Mm.
I think it was suicide. It was a terrible, terrible thing. And Ethel took this job in her way of being, of needing to grieve, but couldn't, or whatever.
Hmm.
That's my imagination, maybe. But she took this job, and that's how I justify why she did it, because she walked into the rehearsal space with the St. Louis Muni Opera. Outside, we rehearsed on the deck, and with Russell Knipe, who was in the original Broadway show with her. He was still
Hmm.
playing the young fellow. And she walked in, and I was in the middle of my big dance number, Dance to the Music of the Ocarina. And the Buff Shure, who was the choreographer, was so excited that one of his principals was a dancer, so that he could build the number around, and it's just better. And I was showing off a little bit because I saw her come in with Russell Knipe, who was also her driver. That was in her contract. And he kind of was the great guy, so great, and he took care of her and made her feel. They came in, and I'm doing this big lift at the end, singing this high note after this big old dance number, and we end, and I'm kind of I see her at the very end, and I'm kind of excited that she's seeing me in this way, and all I hear was this piercing voice. We all heard it. Who did she fuck to get 2 dance numbers? And it was just everyone got silent, and then there was a little like a few titters, and I'm on the guy's shoulder, and I'm slowly lowered down like this, and that was her hello. So after that, she was not it wasn't that she was unfriendly, she just never said hello, never good morning, good night, hello. I would stand in the wings watching her. Maybe that annoyed her, but I loved watching her because she was a great performer.
Mhm.
And every night maybe it's not everybody's idea of performing, but she was of that style. Every finger, every look, everything, every note was so, it was like the same way every night. That's how she did it. That's
Yeah.
it. And kind of presentational, but she had all the stuff to go with it. The audience was on their feet every night. I mean, she really delivered. And so we're doing our scene. I'm playing the princess, having no idea that the last person that played this role was her daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And I found out this afterward, but we're in the scene. I have given my notice because I'm going to do, I think, company. No, maybe, no,
Mhm.
promises or something. I think it was
Yeah.
promises. So it was 69.
Yeah.
Um, and, uh, and we're doing the scene, and all of a sudden I'm saying my lines, and she starts crossing her eyes and making this clucking sound like while I'm talking. And then she continues her line, and then I talk again, and then she does it again. And I come off stage, and I said to the stage manager, I think there's something terribly wrong with Miss Merman. I think she's having a stroke or something. And he said, no, she's just saying goodbye to you. It's a vaudevillian thing that you try to break someone up. You try to disrupt them.
Mhm.
Because before that, when we performed together, she was just like the same,
Yeah.
clocking it in. But, that's how she
Oh, well,
performed. But this was so, unlike what she did before. So that was my Ethel Merman. But afterwards, we were very friendly. When I met her again at Benet Venuta's house, when it was more of a social thing, and Angela, all these wonderful. We were over there to watch Angela Lansbury on the Tony Awards, and there was
uh,
Ruth Mitchell and uh, and Ethel, and I'm trying to think who Florence Klotz, the costume designer for Follies, and we were all watching Ethel, and every woman who, whatever their job was, made a comment on that aspect of Angela's look, or what she was wearing, or what she was doing.
mhm.
Oh, it was hilarious. But so we were friendly after the fact.
Oh, good. It's a funny
Yeah,
story, and I'm glad you told it.
yeah.
It's. I want to ask you: is there any other great memory that we can have on this podcast that we can't do anywhere else? Because it's a private podcast. It's not.
Oh, yeah. A great, but well, there's so many. My gosh. There's one thing. Well, the whole Wicked experience is just, just reminds me of how powerful the connections are that you all put. And what I loved about Michael's work as he developed, I was so privileged to, as we all were, to see how he developed things, how he allowed himself to make mistakes and come, and Wicked had a bumpy thing in the beginning too. They had to work it out, something this great. um when when you arrive there, not everything is going to work, not everything is going to catch on. Great works kind of go, and then maybe they live again many years later, but it's you never know. But when Chorus Line was such a hit at the public theater, at the Newman Theater, and we were able to move to the Schubert. That stands out to me as one of the, it was an opening night. Everybody in the audience had seen the show and was there to not judge it, but to celebrate it, as were the whole cast on stage. We had done it. We were a big hit off Broadway, and we were now moving, and we were in a hit show, and it wasn't going to close. And we loved it. And I didn't have any nerves. You know, everybody has nerves on opening night.
Sure.
But it was a total celebration, and it was the most enjoyable, thing to be able to appreciate that, to be in the moment, to be with the audience, and that kind of special synergy that you have in theater. It was just a great example of this is the most wonderful thing to be able to do. And anyway, that night will stand out to me, and for all theater,
Sure. What was funny though, when we did the tour of Japan with Coruscant, it was a very happy time for us, all of us. I remember it was a pleasure doing the show. We had good friends in the company, like Rita and Bjork had staged it. We just had a great time. I remember that so fondly.
And the Japanese, I'm still meeting people that come to New York from Tokyo that saw the show, like, and I'd actually like to go back, but they loved the show so much, didn't they? They had translations on the back of the seats for non-English speaking. And of course, it didn't always line up with the jokes. The laugh would be in the middle of a serious line, but they were we were sold out, I think, before we arrived. Do you remember that?
And you remember
it was practically sold out.
It was fantastic.
And those big programs that were like $72 each.
Oh, it was a great time, and I remember we brought drums, piano, and lead trumpet, and we just had such a good time doing the show. And it was always.
How was your experience with the Japanese musicians? They were so in love with the show and with you. Remember when we went to the airport to leave? They were there. There was the harpist.
Yes.
There was some of them that showed up, and they were so emotional. They loved, doing the show so much.
Well, this is a terrible pat on my head story, but I will tell you, you should remember when the show, we played Tokyo and then we played Kobe, two different orchestras except for our principal players.
Oh.
And, we were backstage surrounded by cement walls. And of course we didn't have to dress up or anything like that. On closing night in Tokyo, in Shinjuku, there's a knock on my door, and the first woodwind player greets me, and he's in a tuxedo. And he grabs my hand and takes me to the bandstand, and all of the musicians were in black tie, just to say thank you.
Oh my gosh.
And not only it was so flattering, but more than that, it was hot as hell. It was so hot backstage. For them to be doing this was such an ordeal, and they just did it to show respect. And but the orchestra was also excellent. We had no issues at all. It was a
they loved it.
Experience.
I mean, that is fantastic. That is fantastic to show that kind of respect.
It was very good. And then in Kobe,
they did in their culture, but that's what I learned about their culture too. The respect that they had for things and the detail and I never quite understood what we did this wonderful little prayer.
Yes.
In the beginning before the show.
Yes, and all sorts of
these customs, I just so wonderful.
It was such a treat. Well, Donna, we're going to have to do this again another time
Yes.
to talk about the rest of our careers.
Oh
But
my God. Yeah.
I'm so happy to talk to you, and I'm so happy to
Oh,
see
same
you.
here.
And I hope I'm going to make an effort to, I'm not in New York, so I'll make an effort to get to see you be Marable, Madam
Oh,
Marable.
that would be nice.
I
But if you can't, I understand. I don't expect my friend, because it's really everybody's all over the place. But
mhm.
I'll be out in Los Angeles in April, so just putting that out there. You can
Okay,
come. You
well
can.
then.
I'll be at the Catalina. Do you ever go there?
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
Yeah, and the
We'll
Purple Room. It's
we'll
great in
figure that
Palm
out.
Springs. Hour and a
Okay,
half way.
easy,
Oh,
easy. I
Larry,
have a lot
thanks
of
so
friends.
much. I
Pleasure.
love
All
you.
love you too, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
Bye.
ciao.